What's up, y'all? I'm Lady, and this is my 2022 reading wrap up. What you just saw is a scroll through my Goodreads for 2022 showing all of the books that I've read. My goal was to read 52 books, and I exceeded that number by reading 60 books last year. Overall, I would say 2022 was an excellent reading year. I really enjoyed it. I read some different things that wasn't on my radar at the start of the year. Read some new authors. Just, I would say overall, I read a lot of different things, and that to me is what makes it such a great reading year. I read just over 20,000 pages in 22, which was good. I want to up that. I want to read some bigger books in 23, but 20,000 pages in a year, over 60 books is excellent. So I can't complain about that. As you can see in the title of this video, I am calling 22 the year of Beverly Jenkins. In 22, I read 10 Beverly Jenkins books. Now, over the years, I've heard about Beverly Jenkins and her romance writing, but I'm not much of a romance reader. I've gotten into it more within, I'll say, the last 2 or 3 years. And just over the years, the covers of her books have just really kept me away from them. They have those cheesy romance covers that I've just always shied away from and never picked them up. But for whatever reason, Beverly Jenkins came into my life in 22, and I am forever grateful for her books. So I think I said I read 10 books. I don't know what made me start with it, pick them up, but I think I was just looking for something easy to read. I think, it was around summer, around June or July, and I just wanted something easy. Being summertime, I think summer is always great for romance. So the first book I picked up was Forbidden. And then the last book that I finished was To Catch a Raven, which was her latest release. Her last release, actually. Like I said, I read 10 books, and many of her books are a part of a series. So I finished 3 of those series. The Women Who Dare series, which the main characters in those books, were strong-minded women, definitely living ahead of their time. And then there was the Old West series, which took place, it was like the 1800s America, discovering different territories, because it was called, one was in the Nevada territory, the Arizona territory, Wyoming territory. And so one thing about her books, you're going to get your romance, okay? But you're also going to get a history lesson, okay? Very well researched books. And so a lot of it I would be reading, and then I would go to Google and see, about certain parts or certain people that she mentioned. And the third series was the LeVeque family series, which was so fun to read. And this one is about, this series covers, it's a family, the LeVeque family. And I think it's 5 to 7 brothers. I'm not sure, but each brother falls in love at various times with these beautiful women, and the stories go from there. So I absolutely loved it. Now, my favorites of all 10 were Indigo, which happens to be a standalone. Indigo is my number one favorite. Indigo was about a ex-slave. She lives in Michigan now, and she lives on her own, and she is a part of the Underground Railroad. Well, one night, this guy who's moving slaves or something, he's hurt, and he's brought to her home to hide out in her cellar. He's known as, I think, the Black Daniel, and she goes down and she works to help take care of him. He's been hurt, and she sees how he is a beautiful man, and then the story just goes from there. Indigo is the title of the book because when she was a slave, she worked in a blue indigo dye farm in like South Carolina. So her hands were stained purple, and she wore gloves all the time, and he always called her my beautiful Indigo, which I just love that. And my second favorite of the 10 books was Captured. Captured was about this slave who she's on a boat with her slave owners, and pirates come aboard and they steal the treasures, and they steal her from her slave owners and takes her to island in the Caribbean, and a love thing ensues. There's an issue because she has her children back in the States, and that's all I'll say about that. So if you, by any chance, have decided not to read Beverly Jenkins, or if you were like me, turned off by those romance covers, I say throw all doubt out the window and pick up her books. I had to stop myself at 10. I was like, save some for future years or whatever. So get into Beverly Jenkins for sure. In 22, I decided to read some thrillers, or should I say horrors? I guess they consider horrors. Every year in October, I tell myself I want to read something spooky. Well, in 22, I actually did. I read 3 things. I read The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, which I'm just a fan of her writing now after reading this one. This one is kind of has like Carrie vibes. If you remember Carrie, at the prom with the blood, then that's that. But very different, very different. This girl is about a girl who grows up in a mostly white neighborhood, and her big secret is that she is not white. And once that secret is found out, if she was bullied beforehand, but she was definitely bullied after when they found out she was Black, or should I say biracial. So I would recommend that one. It wasn't necessarily, well, it was kind of eerie. Is how I would describe the way she told the story. The next one I read was a graphic novel, The Keeper by Tananarive. This one was short and sweet. I won't go into the details of it because I went into it not knowing, and I feel that was the best way. Just know that it's spooky and that it's good. It's short, okay? Then there was The Between by Tananarive. I have read several of her books throughout the years, but I did not know until after finishing this one that this was her debut, and excellent. Okay, now this one was more of a mental thriller. This one starts out with a young boy. He lives on an island with his grandmother. He runs home one day and he finds his grandmother on the floor. He feels her. She's cold, and he knows or feels that she is dead. He runs and gets a neighbor. And when they get back to the house, Grandma is standing up at the stove cooking as if nothing has happened. Okay? And then so some things happen. They end up going to the beach, and something happens where the grandmother has to save him from drowning. And that's all I'll say about that. The between just really had me thinking. It took me a long time to read that one too. But not because it wasn't good or anything. It just, I don't know, had me thinking a lot about the between and just different subjects, I would say, that came up in this book. So I say read that one. Let's talk about some disappointing reads in 22. The first one is The Love Songs of W.E.B. DuBois by Jeffers. I'm not going to say her first name. I might mess it up. But you saw it everywhere. I think this one came out in 21. And it was everywhere on BookTube and Bookstagram. And just reading the synopsis of it, I just knew this would be a book that I enjoyed. It's a big one, and I heard nothing but great things about it. But I guess I'm on the unpopular opinion side of it because it was just slow for me. I'd never connected with the characters, and it didn't do it for me like what I was expecting. I was expecting something great, and it just wasn't that. So maybe the hype is what made it a disappointment for me. Another one very similar was Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. This one, the synopsis, a family secret, a saga, you getting flashbacks from the past and everything like that. Those type of books, just always I gravitate towards them, and I usually love them. But again, the characters in this one, more so in this one than in the love songs. In Black Cake, I just could not connect. And I know it was a book of fiction, but I was just like, I don't know, some of the decisions, even in a book of fiction, the decisions by the characters just wasn't it. Just another disappointing read was Life After Death by Sister Souljah. So if you were coming of age and a Black girl in the late 90s, then I'm pretty sure you read The Coldest Winter Ever. And The Coldest Winter Ever is a cult classic, okay? And if you are expecting that from the Life After Death, then do not pick up Life After Death. It picks up Winter goes to prison, and she spends 15 years in prison. So the book picks up with her being released from prison, and she's going to have a reality show, and she's going to get into all the foolishness that she got into before, because 15 years later, she's been in prison and she has learned nothing, okay? And so something happens the day she's released, and that's all I'll say about that. And we go into the Life After Death part of the book. And y'all, I half the time reading that book, I was like, what am I reading? Is this really happening? And so I don't want to give the plot away. If it's something, if you're interested in knowing what happened to Winter, then pick it up. But if it's not high on your priority, then it doesn't have to be moved up at all, okay? I did read a couple reviews, and, several people talked about how they feel Sister Souljah was pushing a religious agenda with this story. And I get that. She's entitled to do that as an author. It just, the way she went about it, I don't know if I would. Well, I know I wouldn't have went about it that way. I'm not an author. But at the same time, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. So let's talk about favorites of 22. The first one I will talk about is Before I Forget by Leonard Pitts Jr. And this one is an excellent 5-star read. if this is my second Leonard Pitts Jr., and I do plan to read everything that he writes, okay, when it comes to his novels. I got the third one already on deck to read within the next month. But before I forget follows a man who is in his 50s. He is somewhat famous today. He was more famous in the 70s, R&B singer. But now he's in his 50s and he is starting to forget. He is diagnosed with early onset dementia. And at the same time that he's receiving this diagnosis, his ex-wife tells him that his 19-year-old son is getting into some mess and how he needs to connect and be more there for his son. While at the same time, his dad, who he's estranged from, his dad is ill in California. And his dad's best friend calls him and tells him, hey, you need to get here and check on your dad before he passes away. So he is dealing with that, and he decides to take his son with him on a cross-country road trip to see his dad. And we just get a complete story out of this book. All of the characters well developed, the plot well developed, the ending heartbreaking, but also goes along with the characters. I probably personally would have wanted not a better ending, a different ending, but I get the ending. And just read it, okay? Before I Forget by Leonard Pitts Jr. You won't regret that one. So another book that was a favorite, and I'm going to say this one was 5 stars for me as well. It's The Two Lives of Sara by Catherine Adel West. After reading this one, I found out that it's a prequel to the book Saving Ruby King. I did read Ruby King and really did not care for it, but The Two Lives of Sara is excellent. So Sara is a teenage girl. She finds herself pregnant, and with the help of a friend, she leaves, I think, some part up north. She's living in the Midwest, and then she moves down to Memphis, where she lives in a boarding house with this older lady, and her life just changes. So we flash back to her early life and what it was like, and what her life is like today while raising her child in Memphis. And it is so good. It is so good. It has excellent writing. The characters were great. And all of those great things were, I don't know. I think I really didn't care for the Saving Ruby King because I didn't like the way the characters' lives ended up, if that makes any sense. So that's just a personal thing. So maybe someone else going into Saving Ruby King would love it and then read The Two Lives of Sara. But by me doing it the opposite way, I didn't care for Saving Ruby King. But if you have been eyeing The Two Lives of Sara, I definitely say pick it up. So the next book is Finding Me by Viola Davis. This is a memoir, and after reading this book, I already was a fan, but now I'm like, a fan. I stand for Miss Viola Davis. Knowing the struggles and the things that she came from in her life, just really opened my eyes, to the person that she is. And I also liked how she focused on her craft. She is an actress through and through, and she didn't work any place. She knew what she wanted to be in life, and she went after it. And so I definitely recommend Finding Me by Viola Davis. It's an excellent memoir. And the next favorite was a graphic novel. This one is Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Rouser. And this one is a short graphic novel about 4 friends. It has all the cute 20-year-old black girl magic that, you know, my heart could just barely take it all. The only complaint I have is that it's short, too short. And I need to look up to see if we'll get any other volumes of this graphic novel. I really hope. The next book that's a favorite is Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins-Valdez. This book is heartbreaking. It is based on real life events. In the 1960s in Montgomery, Alabama, there was this government program where they were sterilizing young black women. And it was horrible. Not the book. What happened to these women was heartbreaking. Take My Hand is told from the perspective of the nurse, who she is fresh out of nursing school, young, is wanting to help her people, you know, and she finds out that this clinic that she's working for is working to sterilize young girls, one being as young as 9 years old, that is not even sexually active, has not even seen her cycle yet. So, oh my God, this is one of those books that you have to get your mind right ahead of time, okay? You cannot just go in here with any kind of mindset reading this book, because it will bring you down. But I highly recommend it. And the final book that I want to talk about is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This one is a romance, and I read a review that tickled me that said this is trauma bonding romance, and I cannot disagree with that. The main character, her name escapes me, but in June of, like, she was like 17, 18 years old. She spends these 7 crazy days with this guy. Now they're in their late 30s and they reconnect and things go from there. I really love this story. I love the way she told it. I felt like I felt the emotions from both characters. And then one of my favorite side characters that I read in 22 came from this book. The main character had a daughter who could have been no more than 8 or 10 years old. And she was just so smart and funny. And she played a role with helping her mother, you know, day to day. And it was just a really good book to read. So that's it, y'all. That's my reading wrap up for 2022. Overall, I would say it was a good reading year. So if you are like me, you like to see all of the reading statistics for the year. And coming up, I'm going to show you all the different graphs and pie charts that show my reading statistics from the story graph. I just love seeing those in other people's videos. So stay tuned. Check out those graphs and charts. And that's it for me. I will see you all in my next video.